Listen with me. Reverend Grace Telesco singing our song. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. You are strong. You are sure. Just going to raise your voice and sing. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart. Happy Holy Thursday. I'm recording on a Thursday, but you can take me anytime, anywhere to listen in and hear what we've got to say, how Spirit moves us to listen deeply. In order to prepare for doing that, let's take a nice deep breath in together. Exhale into your heart. Feel your heartbeat. This is just a moment of connection, one to another and together with Spirit, so that we can hear the divine as we ask, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I say to whom? Knowing that if we choose the teacher of the ego, we'll be driven by ego thoughts and concerns. But if we choose the voice of Spirit, the higher holy voice within that we access in the quiet, then we will be led in the place of higher consciousness so that we can see each other as brothers and sisters, so that we can respond to one another with love and kindness and compassion, understanding. We ask to have those eyes today, those eyes that are connected to our hearts. We walk this very sacred path together with a willingness to do better and be better, to rise higher, pray harder, love steadily, and forgive readily. Especially when it's most difficult to do so, we ask for strength, we ask for guidance, we ask for companionship, holy sacred companionship. And when we rest in peaceful contemplation, we connect with that companion. And we say, thank you for your presence. We remove blocks to love's presence so that we can connect, continue, we can feel deep love. And as we feel that deep love, let's take another deep breath and exhale into this moment with gratitude and awe and connection. So welcome to Miracles with a Twist. I want to make a recommendation. I just started watching on Netflix, I think it came out a couple of years ago, a show called Mission Joy. It is about the friendship between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And there's a conversation that takes place between the two of them when they talk about how they got to where they are in their status as spiritual leaders. And the Dalai Lama tells a story about exile, how the exile occurred, what he went through, the long, arduous, dangerous, treacherous journey that he had to take to leave in disguise, to leave Tibet. And he came to the United States, he came to different areas of the world, he's traveled the world to speak words of compassion and kindness and healing. And Desmond Tutu was saying to him, you know, after everything you've been through and how difficult it was, and the continued destruction of Tibet and the overtaking of the Tibetan people, you managed to continue being compassionate and kind and joyful. He said, most people would say, how did this happen to me? How can I escape from this heartache? How can I retaliate? But instead, he noted to the Dalai Lama, you say, how can I help the world to be a better place, to transform itself to a place of kindness? How can we make changes that will help everyone? And the Dalai Lama said that he adhered to Buddhist philosophy, which believes in seeing the world differently, that regardless of what you're going through, regardless of your experience, you learn to see the world differently. You learn to change your mind about the world. And as you begin to see it differently, you respond to it differently. And you do focus on compassion. You do focus on joy. You do focus on kindness. And as he was speaking, it just so happened that I believe I was watching it on the 23rd of January, just a few days ago. And so I had not yet looked at my lesson for the day. And so when I was done watching the show, I said, well, let me catch up on my lesson. And the lessons have been the foundation of understanding the importance of seeing things differently. The whole first section of the workbook is about deconstructing our attachment to the ego's way of interpreting things and starting to look with new eyes, different eyes. So as the Dalai Lama was speaking, I was thinking, wow, that sounds so much like the foundation of A Course in Miracles. So then I look at the lesson for the day, and lesson 23 says, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. The idea for today contains the only way out of fear that will ever succeed. And down on paragraph 4, about halfway through before paragraph 5, there's this line that just sort of jumped out at me for the first time. And you know, I've been reading this for a long time. I've been reading this for close to 30 years. And it says, vision holds a replacement for everything you think you see. Loveliness can light your images and transform them so that you will love them, even though they were made of hate, for you will not be making them alone. So what it is saying, that just like the Buddhist philosophy, that there's another way for us to see. And in changing the way we see, we're not moving into this way of seeing alone. We are changing our mind and moving in sync with brothers and sisters, mighty companions, kindred spirits who also want to see differently. And so we're learning the discipline of seeing with the eyes that are willing to look at loveliness. And so you might say, but oh no, but there's terrorism and there's domestic violence and there's all this horror. And yes, there's all this horror because we made it so. We have made it so. And if we can continue to move into a new way of thinking and not invest so much into that old way of thinking, then we don't engage in the attack thoughts. We don't agree with the attack thoughts. If it's just you, if you're one person out of everyone you know who changes the way you think and changes the way you see things, then you are creating that foundation of loveliness in your own eyes, so that you can start to see things differently. And when you start to see things differently, you start to feel differently. So when I looked further into what was going on with this mission joy, it turned out that there's actually been scientific studies. There was this woman by the name of Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky from the University of California, who actually studies the science of happiness. And what she said was that when the people involved in the study, talked to people and looked at people who were mostly happy in spite of the circumstances, she would look at their hormones, their cellular structure, some scientific name for whatever it was that she was studying. And she said that people who continuously make an effort to be of service to others, who continuously make an effort to be kind, to be compassionate, regardless of the circumstances in their lives. It's not as if she only found people who had like these amazing lives and nothing wrong ever went with them, for them. What she found was that people who were consistently being of service to others, who consistently had a mindset of kindness and compassion and to be of service, had stronger immune systems and ultimately had a deeper sense of peace. And it reminded me that in my own life, I've asked people that I've known who've gone through really difficult circumstances, and I have often said, how have you gotten through it? And almost 100% of the time, they've said, by being of service to others, by getting out of my own self to be of service to others. And the study confirms, because we like scientific studies to confirm what it is we're hearing. And from a spiritual perspective, we're like, well, is it really true? And so what we're finding out is that scientific studies have said that yes, if we make an effort to change the way we see, the way we interact with people, if we remove our attack thoughts, if we remove our counterattack reactivity, if we focus on compassion and kindness, if we focus on being of service, that we find ourselves more at peace. And ultimately, according to the scientific study, we can actually find ourselves healthier. So, one of the examples I've used very much over the years is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. These are people who had the horrible experience of having their child killed by a drunk driver. And instead of being bitter and living in their bitterness, they've changed the laws of the land so that the number of whatever's considered drunk driving was lowered, so that when somebody is tested, they can be considered intoxicated at a lower number, and more so recognizing the danger of buzzed drinking. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. So people who've turned their heartache and their circumstances into ways of helping others. This is what the Dalai Lama is saying, how he found his way to joy. So I highly recommend it. It's called Mission Joy, Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And Desmond Tutu has a lot to say too. I mean, we have to recognize that we're not trapped. That's one of the things he wants us to know. We're not trapped. We're not victims of the world. We're not victims of circumstances. We can be victors. We can be warriors. We can be disciples. We can be determined to do better and be better and rise higher by changing the way we interact with whatever it is that's occurring, and coming from more of a place of loving kindness. Now, that doesn't mean to allow yourself to be abused or badgered or beaten. It means that if that had happened to you, that you, instead of being in a place of continuous anger and letting the anger eat away at you, literally eat away at you, that you find a place for your own self in the situation, so that you can watch yourself and see, where do you go? What do you do? Who are you as a result of that situation? How do you rise above it? In A Course in Miracles, it talks about being above the battlefield. How do we go above the battlefield instead of engaging in battle? We can rise above the battlefield and look and decide that we don't want to engage. We don't want to be a part of it. And instead of being angry because that's what is occurring, that we come from a place of loving compassion and kindness, and we do whatever it is we can, even if it's limited, even if it's very limited, we do whatever it is we can, and it can be just enough It can be just small steps that we can take to change our own minds, to change our own hearts, to change the way we look at the world. So that if that's all we can do, then that's what we do. And why? Why do we do this? Because we want peace. We want peace. Ultimately, we want peace. And there is a lesson further on in the year, lesson 185, that tells us, I want the peace of God. I want peace. I want to be at peace. God's will for us is perfect happiness. God's will for us is perfect peace. And how do we find that? Well, according to not just the Course in Miracles, but all spiritual practices, the way we find our way there is by moving our mindset out of the constraint and the dictates of ego thinking. And so when I say ego thinking, it's not to make the ego a bad thing. It's to recognize that there's so many subconscious messages, there's so many triggers that we have, and it's our responsibility to take a good look at them, to be rigorously honest within ourselves so that we can see who we are and how we are in any circumstance, and to decide on any given moment, day by day, to start your day, making the decision to see with eyes of love, to look at the loveliness behind the circumstances that are before you. And you might say, well, how can I see that? How can I see that? Well, maybe what you see is an ugly picture. The loveliness behind it is your opportunity to not be that, that difficult situation, or that harmful way of being, or whatever it is that's going on out there that we know is hurtful from one to another human being, and we don't want to engage in that. Well, when we engage in it with anger and upset and retaliation, or anything that we do that's anything other than loving, then we're just feeding it. We're putting fuel on the fire. And sometimes it's hard for us to recognize that, because sometimes we really, really want our own story to have justice. I want my story, my special story, to have some justice. I want that person or that situation to have something that will come to a conclusion that will make me feel better. But that's not always the way. And we can't always find ourselves on the receiving end of some justice of a situation that occurred out there. That's why no matter what is happening, has been going on since the beginning of time, that it's up to us to decide who we want to be and how we want to be and how we want to interact in the world with the world. And if we want peace, then our decision has got to be for peace, or else we just become a part of the problem. We just become a part of the conflict. So it says to say these words, to say, I want peace. To say these words is nothing, but to mean these words is everything. If you could but mean them for just an instant, there would be no further sorrow. Heaven would be completely given back to full awareness. Two memories with one intent, two minds with one intent become so strong that what they will becomes the will of God. For minds can only join in truth. We want the peace of God. This is no idle wish. These words do not request a dream to be given or a bargain in the hope that they may yet be one that can succeed where all else have failed. To mean these words acknowledges that the illusions have been in vain and requests the eternal in the place of shifting dreams. Today, we devote our practice to careful searching of our mind. So what does it mean to make another bargain in the hope that there may be one that can succeed where others have failed? It means that we recognize the pattern. We recognize the pattern of wanting to sort of bargain with truth, to bargain with the universe. You know, it's like jumping off a building and saying, well, I would like not to fall. Can you reverse the laws of gravity for me? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. There's certain laws of the universe. There's our energy that we put out, and there's the energy that comes back. There's reciprocity. There's cause and effect. And so when we take the discipline of our mind to move into a place of kindness and caring and compassion, it simply means that we want to enter into whatever circumstance there is that we have to enter into from a place of peace, from a place of what the Course calls right thinking, the right mind. So what's the right mind? It's the mind, the part of ourselves that is dependent on the higher holy self, the higher Holy Spirit self, to give us direction, to help us move without a sense of vengeance, without the desire to attack or counterattack. And it's something that we have to be truly deeply honest with ourselves about. And so the Dalai Lama said that Buddhist psychology, psychotherapy, is about looking at the world differently. Course in Miracles is about looking at the world differently. So then our own individual question has to be, do I want to see this differently? Do I want to see peace instead of this? Do I want to get a higher holy self companion that can help me to see differently, that can help me to shift my eyes, that can help me to see the loveliness? And it's not about being in denial of certain unpleasant things that we see or experience. It's about denying ourselves the attack mindset, denying ourselves to be driven by the ego, to attack or counterattack, to be fueled by anger, to be fueled by hate, to instead take a step back, take a deep breath and say to the Holy Spirit, I do want to see this differently. How can I see it differently? How can I remove my own angst, my own pain, my own heartache? And the truth of the matter is that our own individual experiences are our opportunities to rise higher, because none of us get through life without some sorrow. And so the sorrow is our opportunity to dig a little bit deeper. Who am I in this? Who are we together in this? How is our spiritual companionship going to get stronger if one of us or both of us succumbs to the ego's decision that we just need to scream and yell and be angry? We need to have our say in an unkind way. We don't want that. We don't want that, because that will not bring us peace. It might bring us a little moment, like a little moment, like, aha, I have my say. It's not going to last. That kind of moment doesn't last. A lot of times when you find yourself doing that kind of thing, you end up feeling bad because you think, well, that's really not my best self. That's really not what I want to say. And hopefully next time I won't be that way, because we really do want to rise higher. We do really do want the peace of God. So I was going to quote myself again. It's going to be a thing now, quoting myself from The Bumpy Road to Enlightenment. I was referring here to a workshop that I had co-facilitated with someone else, talking about the topic of frightening situations and changes that are going on in our lives that we're resistant to. And it says, we all agreed that even in the midst of our trials, there was a flicker of hope, an inner knowing of sorts that peeked into our troubled times. We discussed the fact that because of our pain, we began a journey to an enlightenment of self, of heightened awareness, of movement toward positive change. Books appeared that spoke to us as unseen guides. New friends presented themselves as gifts. Spiritual comforts began to emerge and settle in as permanent guests. We began to grow toward a way of being that seems strangely suitable to an emerging, stronger self. So if we really want to live from this emerging, stronger self, then our focus has got to be peace. We don't have to engage. We don't have to engage in the old way of being that went into an argument, that went into having to be heard and having to be right. And even when it's the bigger stuff, not, outside the personal things, sometimes it's the bigger stuff, like politics or social injustice. We can have our voice heard, but we can have our voice heard from a deeply held sense of balance within our hearts, wanting to truly be heard from a place of compassion, just like the Dalai Lama, just like Desmond Tutu, just like Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr., before he died, knew that there was a chance that he had limited time on this earth. And he wanted to use that limited time to say the kinds of things that would help people feel more empowered and more hopeful for a better future. And if that's all we do, then that's what we can do. It's not about turning a blind eye. It's about opening a loving eye and a loving heart. And then, just as I was about to come here for broadcast, somebody posted a Rumi quote. And guess what it says? No surprise. It says, love is the cure. Your pain will keep giving birth to more pain until your eyes exhale love effortlessly. And I thought, what? Eyes don't exhale. Physiologically, eyes don't exhale. But in light of everything that we're hearing, everything that we're reading, everything that we're doing as disciplined on this path, it's about changing our eyes. It's about changing. So in a way, we're exhaling the old way of seeing and embracing a new way of seeing. So let me say it again. Love is the cure. For your pain will keep giving birth to more pain until your eyes consistently exhale love effortlessly. And that is where we want to get to, where it is just effortless to think peaceful thoughts, to respond to one another from a place of peace, from a place of kindness, from a place of compassion. I want the peace of God. And I know you want the peace of God. So let's pray together that our eyes will indeed begin to see the loveliness and the light beyond the circumstances, beyond the illusion of this dream time. You know, sometimes I get a little frustrated with the limitation of language. And so when we say illusion, if you're in the middle of a difficult time, you say, I don't want to hear about illusions. But there's somewhere in the Course where Jesus uses the word hallucination. And I think that is an accurate description. That is a more accurate description. Because if you think about a hallucination, if any of you, have gone into a time of life where you allowed yourself to play with your mind and your brain. And when you're in a state of hallucination, you're sort of in the body looking at something that is a kaleidoscope of unrealness. And yet you kind of feel like it's real. You kind of feel like, whoa, what's going on? Is that tree really moving? What is it that's going on? Well, I'm sitting here watching it. Guess what? That's what A Course in Miracles is telling us, that we're just sitting here watching it. And it's not a new concept. The Vedanta tells us that. Sufism tells us that. Buddhism tells us that. All the mystic paths tell us that. And so if we know that we're here for a limited amount of time, and while we're here in this limited amount of time, we're going to see some horrible things, we're going to see some joyful things, we're going to have some wonderful days and pleasurable experiences, and we're also going to have some heartache. And we know that that's just part of our experiences as human beings. Then the idea that we can go through all of that from a place of peace makes a lot more sense than deciding that, you know what, I just need to stay in the battle instead of rising above the battle, watching the battle, being in prayer, being in commitment to having eyes of love, to seeing loveliness. And I know you're lovely, and because of your loveliness, you can do this too, because I know you want the peace of God. So let's take a moment to be in prayer. To all that is holy and sacred, to our guide, to our teacher, we give humble thanks, knowing that regardless of what we do, how we do it, that you are always there. You're always there for us, reminding us of your presence, asking us to remove the blocks to your presence, asking us to quiet the chatter of our minds so that we can hear you and feel you and be you in a way that allows us to represent Christ consciousness in the world. That we can be the voice, that we can be the eyes, that we can be the heart of true deep love beyond what we ever thought was possible. It is possible because it's within your capability. We thank you for this. We thank you, and we thank one another. So let's just give it a go. Looking at the world, and you open up your eyes in the morning, just know that these physical eyes may not be telling me the truth. So let me go deeply within to my heart and pray that the next 24 hours that have been given me are filled with opportunities for me to rise higher, to love steadily, and to forgive readily. Amen to that. Namaste. And God bless you.